What's up, guys? It's Zach. I'm a Division One baseball player looking to answer some of life's biggest questions. And one day, I hope to have a podcast like Joe Rogan, where I can talk with interesting people and just learn from them and hopefully teach you guys along the way, right? So, in today's video, I'm doing something a little bit different. I can't really interview amazing people yet. I don't have the platform for it. So, I'm going to use ChatGPT and YouTube and other resources to try to learn about something that I find interesting. So, as a baseball player, mental performance is huge and positive self-talk is huge. But something that I always see and I run into myself is you can have positive self-talk like here and there, but then like you really want to say don't do this, don't do that. Why do we turn to don't versus do more often? So like what's the reality? How do we overcome that? So I think the goal of this is to learn how to overcome that by the end of today. Should be only like a 20-minute video. I'm going to ask ChatGPT the first couple of questions. I'm going to share my screen. So now let's go on ChatGPT. I am wondering why negative self-talk, if I can type, happens so much more than positive. Like, well, let's not use the word like. It is much easier to say don't do this than do this. Are there any studies as to why, or any short YouTube video that are super interesting that I can learn about? Just give me one short paragraph and then a YouTube video. Afterwards, I want to come up with a strategy to overcome this. All right, let's see what it does. I love that chat can do this. All right, there's a strong psychological explanation for this called negativity bias. Your brain tends to give more attention and weight to threats, mistakes, and potential losses than equally strong positive information. From an evolutionary perspective, don't eat that, it might kill you, mattered more for survival than go enjoy that nice thing. So avoidance-based thinking became extremely useful. That's actually super interesting right there. And it makes sense. So I think this is going to be something important for mental performance, is to understand how it works. Research consistently finds that adults attend to and learn from negative information more strongly than positive information. Side note, that makes sense for the way social media tends to push negative things out or divisive things out because it's more captivating for people. All right. And neuroscience research supports a stronger response to negative stimuli. That might help explain why something like don't strike out can appear automatically, while see the ball and attack your pitch requires intentional thought. Interestingly, research on self-talk also finds that self-criticism and self-respect produce measurably different patterns to brain activity. For a short introduction, watch Your Brain is Wired for Negative Thoughts. Here's how to change it. It directly covers the negativity bias and what you can do about it. After you watch it, I think there's a really interesting strategy we can build around converting every don't thought into a specific do command, especially for baseball. I want to do this for all of you guys, not just for baseball, but this is interesting. Let's watch the video now and open it up.
Okay, so you got a new sweater. It looks great, and you're getting tons of compliments. But then, just one person says something snarky about it. And even though you got all that praise, you can't help but stew over the negative comment. Why is that? Why does our mind seem to dwell on the negative?
I'm going to pause this real quick. I think that happens to so many people. I think somebody hears one thing negative, whether it's from someone they respect or someone they don't respect. They'll post something and get a negative comment, or they'll, go out of their comfort zone for the first time in real life and get a negative comment, and it'll cause them to quit. And this whole study, I'm hoping, will help prove why you guys shouldn't do that, why you guys should just keep going and keep pushing forward, because one negative comment is not the end of the world. You're so much more than that. But let's keep going.
A lot of my research focuses on how people will tend to get stuck in particular ways of thinking and what enables them to get unstuck. Allison Ledgerwood is a psychology professor at UC Davis. I get to study how humans think and how we could maybe think better. We all know the expression about seeing a glass as half full or half empty. It isn't just what you see, but how you see it. And the way you describe that glass to people can really change how they feel about it. Allison wanted to know what happens when you try to switch your way of thinking from the positive frame to the negative frame, or vice versa. Her research team brought 2 groups of people into the lab and told them about a new surgical procedure. Group 1 was told that the procedure has a 70% success rate. For Group 2, they framed it as a 30% failure rate.
It's the same exact procedure, and they're giving you the exact same information, but one doctor is focusing on the part of the glass that's full, and the other doctor is focusing on the part of the glass that's empty.
So, no surprise, people like the procedure when it's described in positive terms, and they don't like it when you focus on the failure rate. But then, the researchers pointed out to the first group that you could also think of the procedure as failing 30% of the time. Suddenly, people didn't like it anymore. And when they tried a similar thing with Group 2, pointing out that the procedure had a 70% success rate, people didn't change their mind.
And over again in studies.
Wow, that's actually, I don't know if you guys caught that. So if you hear negative first and try to make it positive, it doesn't really change your mind. But if you hear positive and then get the negative, it does change your mind. And that's something that I hope to learn from this. Hopefully this video explains how can we hear that positive and maybe a negative comes about and stay positive, or is there even a way if you hear something negative first to forget about it and make it positive? Let's hopefully see it in the video, but we'll see.
Like that, we find that people seem to get stuck in the negative way of thinking about it, and it's hard for them to flip and focus on the positive.
So once you frame something negatively, it really sticks.
It makes sense from an evolutionary or functional perspective that our minds are built to look for negative information in the environment and to hold on to it once we find it.
Imagine your prehistoric ancestors. You don't want to forget that there might be a predator lurking around.
In many situations, we want our minds to be grabbed by the negative information so that we can fix problems when they're there.
But then, there are other situations where we want to get over some small imperfection or a bit of bad news when it's not helpful to fixate on the negative. What do we do then?
What I really take away from this research for my own life is that it's difficult to see the upside and that it takes work, literally, that we have to put effort into looking at the bright side of things, that we can't assume that our mind is just going to do that automatically, and that it's very easy to just keep tilting back towards the negatives.
And this is something you can counteract with practice, like spending a few minutes each day thinking about the things you're grateful for. Doing this regularly can help it become a habit. And it turns out that this negative bias can change over time. Remember when you were younger and any bad experience felt like the end of the world?
So this kind of pervasive negativity bias starts to diminish. And so in our research, we find that the stickiness of a negative frame seems to disappear entirely by the time people are in their 70s. And they seem to flow back and forth between negatives and positives much more easily.
So maybe...
Interesting. That's super interesting. So for starters, I think that's something we could all take from this video. Let's spend more time thinking positively. Literally just take time, maybe 5 minutes out of your day just to reflect on all the positives. But isn't that funny? When you get older, you can go from negative to positive much quicker. I think it's because, I don't know why that is, but I would assume maybe it's because when you're at an older age, you've already seen a lot of life and you already know your life is coming into an end. And so you start to realize, it's kind of like in the book of Ecclesiastes with Solomon. He talks about, at the end of the day, we all go back to dust. We all die. So, like, what is the point? What is the point of us worrying about little earthly things? What is the point of that? So, I think maybe putting that into that perspective and really going into a way where you can be like, sure, that may have not been the best thing, but I learned from it. Let's make it positive. And just realizing that life is short, life is finite, life is small. We're literally just little ants. The more that you can really like turn that into a positive and really be happy about it. And hopefully just be more happy about life and more positive and really impact that mental performance in a positive light.
That's something we can all be grateful for. That there are actually some good things about getting older. How do you get out of negative ways of thinking? Let us know in the comments below. And be sure.
I hope that video was helpful. The video was really interesting. It said people who hear negative first and then positive rarely change their opinions to the positive, but people who hear positive and then negative are more willing to change their mindsets to negative. Is there a strong method to counteract? All right, yes, the strongest approach is not trying to suppress the negative thought, but training yourself to notice it and immediately reinterpret it into a specific, believable action. Research on cognitive reappraisal suggests that people who habitually reinterpret negative information should reduce negativity bias, while simply suppressing negative reactions is much less effective. Studies of cognitive reframing also suggest that the replacement thought works better when it is specific and realistic rather than blindly positive. All right, so you're supposed to recognize it. So you say, don't strike out. And then you say, you notice you're judging. Okay, what do I actually want to do? I want to see it deep, hunt middle, compete. I want to just attack the baseball. Or don't chase, switch to seed up. You recognize what your negative is and you turn that into a positive, just without blindly being positive. Interesting. Let's ask what chat thinks. It also said that old people more easily switch from negative. Why do you think that is? Yes, there's actually a name for the age-related positivity effect. Compared with younger adults, older adults tend to pay more attention to positive information, remember positive experiences more strongly, and disengage more readily from negative information. It's a well-replicated finding, including in meta-analytic research. The leading explanation is socio-emotional selectivity theory. And I think it's fascinating. As people perceive their remaining time in life as more limited, their priorities tend to change. That's what I said. Look at that. Younger people are more focused on the future, learning, improving, detecting threats, figuring out what could go wrong. But those goals make negative information valuable. What am I doing wrong? What do I need to fix? Older adults tend to prioritize emotional meaning and satisfaction in the presence. So their attention becomes more selectively directed toward information that helps maintain emotional well-being. Researchers argue that this is more likely a motivational shift than simply the brain getting worse at processing negativity. So maybe we just need to think like we're old in those capacities, right? Let's look at the big picture. Look at what our life is. I'm not saying as a young adult you shouldn't be trying to learn and grow because we don't have the wisdom as old people, but there's something we can learn from them in that aspect. There's an important distinction. This isn't necessarily old people become delusionally optimistic. It's closer to becoming better at deciding which information deserves a mental real estate. And I'm sure that's something that you just have to learn over time, but I'm sure seeing the different perspectives might help you. So, last question before we end this video. Let's do this. Let's get the transcript. Show transcript. Here is the vid transcript. Will you give me a bulleted list of the key facts? Keep it short, only the most important. And then create a strategy for everyone, not just baseball players, to help with this side of mental performance. See. All right, key facts. Negative information sticks more than positive information. We talked about that. The same fact feels different depending on framing. 70% success feels better than 30% failure. Once people switch into a negative frame, they have a harder time switching back to the positive. This is likely an evolutionary purpose. Noticing and remembering threats helps humans survive. Negativity is useful when it helps solve a real problem, but harmful when it turns into a pointless fixation. Obviously, right? You don't want it. There are reasons to be negative, but like the video showed, a pimple on your nose isn't one of those things. Positive thinking usually takes deliberate effort, but the brain does not automatically rebalance itself. Practices like daily gratitude can help train attention towards positive. So that's a habit we can use. Spend time just thinking positively. The stickiness of negativity appears to weaken with age. So talk with old people maybe. Maybe that's a good habit. All right, so a simple strategy. So notice, judge, reframe, direct. Notice. Catch the negative thought without immediately believing it. You could say, I'm thinking I'm terrible at this, and then judge. Ask one question. Is this giving me useful information? If yes, extract the lesson. If no, stop feeding it attention. Reframe. Describe the same reality in a more balanced way. I messed that up becomes the attempt went badly, and now I know what to change. And direct. Finish with something actionable and positive. I think the actionable part is important. Not don't mess up again. Instead, slow down and focus on the first step. Notice how that shifted it kind of into a positive. Then, add 2 habits that attack negativity bias before it happens. Front load your mind with a useful intention each morning. What do I want to focus on today? And at night, deliberately recall 3 things that went well and why. The goal isn't to eliminate negative thoughts, it's to stop letting negative framing become the final interpretation. So over time, you're essentially training the brain to move from threat, information, action, instead of threat, rumination. So that's important. So we learned today, notice, to judge, to reframe, to direct. Instead of threat to rumination, we're going to do threat to information to action. I really hope this video helped. Let me know if you guys like it in the comments, if you guys have something that you want to learn with me. Otherwise, and if you guys are interesting in any sort of way, you don't have to be famous. If you guys just want to talk about something that you've learned, talk about your perspective, I'd be more than willing to do a podcast with you. Just reach out to me on Zach Wadas Daily. I have this on YouTube. I have this on Instagram. I have it on TikTok and Twitter. So yeah, I thought this was an interesting video. I hope this helped. And that's all I got for today.